Good evening, everybody. We're very grateful to have all of you here, 62 devices as we get started. And I'm sure more people will come on because Heshy was a very dear person that was loved by many, many people. I'm going to share my screen with you so I can share some of the prayers that we're going to do here tonight. Okay. Tell them I'm struggling to sing with angels who hint at it in black words printed on old paper gold edged by time. Tell them I wrestle the mirror every morning. Tell them I sit here invisible in space, nose running, coffee cold and bitter. Tell them I tell them everything, and everything is never enough. Tell them I'm davening and voices rise up from within to startle children. Tell them I walk off into the woods to sing. Tell them I sing loudest next to waterfalls. Tell them the books get fewer, words go deeper. Some take months to get through. Tell them there are moments when it's all perfect. Above and below, it's perfect. Even in moments in between where sparks in space, terrible, beautiful sparks in space, are merely metaphors for the void between one pore and another. I just want to make sure everyone's muted so we don't have a lot of extraneous noise. We are going to begin the Ma'ariv service, the evening service, with the Baruch Hu, the call to worship.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed HaMevorach HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
If you know the prayer in Hebrew and you'd like to follow along, please do, but unfortunately we have to keep muted or it will sound cacophonous. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna meshanei tim, umachalif et hazmanim, umsader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono. Boreyom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, uma avir yom umevi layla, mavdil bein yom uvein layla Adonai tzvaot shemo. L'chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. And the English of the next blessing is a blessing of love, that out of love, God has offered us the Torah and the mitzvot. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night, we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. And we join together in the Shema.
Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Shema 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 Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad
And we continue with the Ve'ahavta.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להיות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אמת.
Love God with all the power of your heart, with its yearnings, its passions, with all you hold dear in life, and with the fullness of what the world gives you. Wrap these words around your deeds as a holy garment, and let them shape your home into a dwelling place of peace. Wherever you go, scatter the words like seeds. Let them be drops of water on the thirsty earth. Seal these words upon your heart, that their sacredness may permeate your being, coursing through your veins, melting body into soul. Now, the Mi Chamocha is a prayer that we say to commemorate the opening of the sea and allowing us to pass on dry land after being slaves in Egypt and walking towards the promised land. But it also is a prayer about the fact that God allows us to open our hearts and our souls, even when we are in narrow places that result from a great loss, and that eventually we do feel again like we can breathe. Let's keep that in mind as we sing the Mi Chamocha.
Mi chamocha boilim Adonai, mi kamocha nedor b'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef ele, malechutecha rovanecha, פלוגי לפני משה, זה ליענו ויאמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Give us a place to rest, Adonai, our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בילמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל, בגולה בגולה ובזמן הקריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה, יתברך יתברך וישתבח, וידבר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בימה ויאמרו amen.
We continue with the tefillah, which during the week has 19 blessings. We'll join together in the first three, and then we'll do the others silently.
Adonai sifatai, sifatai tiftach, ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai, sifatai tiftach, ufi agid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah, האוהל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא והעליון, גומל חסדים טובים וגונה יעקב, וזוכר חסדי אבו ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרא שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם, אדוני מחלקות הרב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמנתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל, אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
And we continue silently.
Hello.
We complete the tefillah with a prayer for peace, Shalom Rav, a great peace.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Ki atahu Melech Adon Lecha Shalom. Ki atahu Melech Adon Lecha Shalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Betov b'neicha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Le'olam.
We now move to the part of the service where we will remember Heshy and pay tribute to him. And we begin with some material from our scriptures that give us comfort. Adonai, what are we that you have regard for us? Adonai ma Adam.
Adonai Ma'adam v'tedawehu ben enosh v'tchashvehu Adam l'chev adamav yamav kitzel over b'boker yatzit v'chalav lo erev yamalav v'yavesh tashev enosh ad daka Vatomer Shiva v'nei Adam.
And Psalm 23, Adonai Roi. I'm sure we all know this, but let's do it together. Again, muted, unfortunately, but let's recite it together. A Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I lack nothing. God makes me lie down in green pastures. God leads me to water in places of repose. God renews my life. God guides me in right paths as befits God's name. Though I walk through a valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You spread a table for me in full view of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over, my drink is abundant. Only goodness and steadfast love shall pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. And we also look to our contemporary poets for comfort. And this is by a wonderful Israeli poet, Zelda. Each person has a name. We each have a name given by God and given by our father and mother. We each have a name given by our stature and smile and given by our attire. We each have a name given by the hills and given by the walls. We each have a name given by the stars and given by our friends. We each have a name given by our sins and given by our yearnings. We each have a name given by our enemies and given by love. We each have a name given by celebrations and given by our work. We each have a name given by the seasons and given by our blindness. We each have a name given by the sea and given by our death. I used to be part of you, belong to you, the extension of your being. But now you live within me, are the spark of my consciousness. I say Kaddish for you, with you, as you sing your melodies, speak your words, hearing your voice and mine, and my eyes, too green, have somehow started to reflect the blue of yours. I used to be part of you, protected by your presence, by your light, but now the time is mine, and alone I must be more than myself. Your child has become your heir, has become you. And the you that Heshy's children are becoming is the subject of my eulogy. Heshy was born in Philadelphia on October 4th, 1930, to Victor and Anna Rudolph Glick. His parents divorced when he was quite young, and he lived with his mother, grandmother, and uncle. When he was 10, his mother came home with a man and declared, "Harry, this is Ben, we're getting married." Heshy, who was known as Harry to his mother, responded, "Well, what do I call him?" "Call him Ben." A couple of years later, Heshy had a new baby brother, Alan. Heshy's mother owned a luncheonette, so he grew up working there and learned how to make a mean milkshake and an ice cream soda. Heshy met his beshert, Norma, on a blind date in the summer of 1951. Heshy's friend Joe had a date with a woman named Bobby, and Joe suggested they go on a double date with a friend of Bobby's. And the main reason for the double date was that Heshy owned a car. The car in question was a 41 Chevy that was falling apart and cost about $200. They met on Broad Street in front of Temple University Hospital, and they had a great time. And Heshy thought that Norma was great. He called her up right afterwards and then called her a few more times. At that time, the Korean War was on. Heshy was working in his mother's luncheonette, and he got two great job offers, one from the post office and the other from the Pennsylvania Railroad. It was a great choice, but then he received a letter from the Selective Service to report for a physical and for testing. He passed, and then he had two options. If he enlisted, he could pick which branch he would serve in, but that would be for 4 years. If he was drafted, he would serve a minimum of 2 years, or as long as they needed him. Heshy decided to enlist in the Air Force. He had seen a man on a trolley car with wings, and he wanted to do that himself. And thus began a peripatetic life around the country and across the world. Heshy went through basic training in New York as an aviation cadet. He was then sent to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, and then to Texas for navigator training, and then to California outside of Sacramento. After a year and a half, he became a second lieutenant. In February of 1954, he got his commission, and by the beginning of July, he got his wings and served as a bombardier. Since cadets were not allowed to get married, as soon as he got his wings, Heshy went back to Philadelphia and married Norma on July 25th, 1954. They spent their honeymoon at Niagara Falls, which they got to in his 52 Buick. Now that happened to be the summer when part of the falls collapsed in. And that was not the only wedding mishap. Lindell's, which was the photographer for their wedding and as all Jewish weddings, somehow managed to have a problem with their flash, and none of the wedding pictures came out. But their wedding lasted for many years anyway. Norma joined Heshy when he was sent to Rapid City, South Dakota, and they lived there for 5 years. Heshy says it looked like the Wild West, filled with cowboys, cows, and horses. In Rapid City, Heshy taught Norma how to drive. Now, there was actually no test for a driver's license there, and then you just filled out an application and paid 50 cents. Connection to Judaism was always important to them. Every place they ever went, they made sure they had a connection to a synagogue. Rapid City only had about 10 Jewish families. There was no synagogue, so Sunday school classes occurred on the upper floor of a drugstore. Heshy and Norma helped to start the synagogue of the Black Hills. And that little synagogue met on the base in a chapel where they had their own services. In 1956, their older daughter, Susan, was born. 2 years later, Lori came along, and then 2 years after that, Martin. The family left South Dakota for Amarillo, Texas, where their youngest daughter, Shirley, was born. They spent 5 years in Texas, and Heshy was a navigator on B-36 planes, which carried nuclear bombs. His shifts were very long, and he was gone a lot. But luckily, the squadron would close down for a month at a time, so Heshy, Norma, and the kids would go to Philly to see her family. Norma would always get a month's worth of homework ahead of time and homeschool the kids in the car. When they got back to school, the kids were always way ahead of the rest of the class. After Texas, the family was off to Chanute Air Force Base in Illinois for 18 months, and Heshy served there as an Air Force maintenance officer. Then it was 3 years in Okinawa, where Heshy went ahead to find a home for the family. It took him 3 months before the others could join him. Heshy flew missions over Vietnam, and the family took trips to Hong Kong and the Philippines. According to Heshy, there was great Chinese food on Okinawa. The Officers Club offered a great buffet for $1. And best of all, the commissary in Okinawa had tasty cakes from Philly and T-bone steaks. Now, since the family only had one car, Heshy got around on a motorcycle. Now, the officers and their spouses played some pretty interesting games there. For example, they would set up a row of chairs. The men would roll their pants up, and then the women were blindfolded. And the women had to find their husbands. Apparently, Norma could always find hers because Heshy had nice, full calves, while other men had scrawny legs. And those are Heshy's own words. So it was so easy for Norma to find him that they kept moving Heshy around, and the other women kept having trouble finding their husbands, but Norma always found Heshy. Their final stop was Riverside, where they settled down for good. After 20 years in the Air Force, Heshy retired and got a job working for Red Wing Shoes Store, which was a store for men in San Bernardino. It was owned by Joe Gerhardt from Temple Bethel. Now, Joe guaranteed the shoes. So people would come in after wearing them for 10 years and complain that the shoe was falling apart and they wanted a new pair. Well, Heshy kept good notes on everybody's shoes, and nobody got new shoes after 10 years. Heshy and Norma liked doing things with the family. They liked doing things with hers in Philadelphia and their own children. They went on trips together to San Diego, to Santa Barbara, Idlewild, cruises and riverboat trips to the Panama Canal, to Alaska, Amsterdam, Norway, South America, Europe, Tahiti, Israel. They enjoyed theater and had season tickets to community players, the Symphony, Landis Theater, the Redlands Bowl, the San Bernardino Civic Light Opera, the Hollywood Bowl, and of course, they loved watching a bunch of TV shows. They also enjoyed museums, the Natural History Museum, art museums, science, the Arboretum, and of course, especially Norma enjoyed the stores in Palm Springs. Heshy loved working in the yard, taking care of the swimming pool, the plants, the trees, and he was still trimming trees at the age of 90. He continued to read Air Force magazines and the newspaper, which he read all the way through. He was great at crossword puzzles and word search, and he was a poker aficionado, playing with buddies that he had for many, many years. Heshy and Norma had a wonderful marriage. Their prime rule, when they went to bed at night, they always hugged and kissed. They never went to bed angry. When they got up in the morning, the first thing they did was to kiss each other. They were both very dedicated to Temple Beth El. They participated in the Temple Bowling League. Heshy was involved in the Temple Bingo Kitchen, served as B'nai B'rith president, helped fund the Hillel at UCR and the local United Jewish Fund. And as you probably all know, Heshy had a very dry sense of humor. He served as president of the Senior Havurah, always beginning every meeting with a series of somewhat salacious jokes that he got from the internet. Those jokes were sent by Norma's older brother to Susan, who then relayed them to her father. Norma and Heshy were always the ones when someone needed a ride, they were the ones to take people. Now for Heshy, family came first. He was always very loving. He worked 6 days a week, but always took off on Sundays to do things together as a family. Vacations were always with family. His son Martin was in the Boy Scouts, so Heshy became a Boy Scout leader. He would navigate from the stars. His classes in the Air Force, physics, astronomy, math served him quite well. He would use a slide ruler to figure out navigation. Then if the wind changed, he would have to recalculate. During the summer, the family would go to the beach, Newport Beach, Corona del Mar, for swimming, hiking, and pizza. They would come home at 10 or 11 at night. And they took family trips to San Francisco, to Carmel, to Morro Bay, to Hearst Castle. They visited libraries, history and science museums, the zoo. And Heshy taught his kids to drive, especially Susan behind an Alphabeta store, warning her not to crash into a wall when she went into reverse. And she didn't. Heshy was a protective father, teaching by example, paying bills on time, keeping his house in order. And the values he gave his children were to always be honest, to stand up for what you believe, and if you see something that needs to be done, you step up and do it. Volunteerism was very important to him. I'd like to now share a little montage of some photos of Heshy.
אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר כאשר
I'd like to now open this up to anyone who would like to share a memory of Heshy. You can just unmute.
Okay, I guess I'll start then. Daughter number one. It's like I always felt that I had the best parents in the world because, like I said, they were always there for us. They were, very protective. I think probably more protective as me being the firstborn, because I saw my brother and sisters got to do things that I would never even have thought to ask my parents to do. But they were always there for us, and like I said, vacations and all, it was about us all being together and doing. And I can remember one time not wanting to go. I think I was about 16, and my dad's like, if Susie doesn't go, we're not going. And that was something else. When I say Susie, when they named us, I guess my dad had so many different nicknames that he wanted to make sure that whatever our name was, that's what we were called. So I'm Susan, but my dad, he was about the only one that called me Susie. Everybody else would call me Susan. And then Lori would be called Lore. Martin, Mart or Marty. And Shirley, Cheryl. We're like, Dad, you wanted to call us by our names. That was kind of funny. And then his middle name, I thought, NMI. And I'm like, what kind of middle name is that? Well, in the military, you had to have something on that line, and he didn't have a middle name. So in the military, NMI stood for no middle initial. So I was just Susan Glick, because at the time there was only one person that needed to be named after. So when I got married, I took Glick as my middle name. So I became Susan Glick Bronstein. And I think the first time they wrote a check for me, they started writing Susan Glick and said, oh, we forgot. So then they just added Bronstein. And I said, no, that's my name. They didn't realize what I had done, but I don't know. And I got really lucky in the end being able to spend a lot of time with my parents. I ended up with an early retirement, and that ended up being a blessing, because otherwise I would not have been able to spend the time with them that I did. Shirley and I were talking about it when my mom broke her collarbone. We probably would have had to put them in a senior living facility at that time. But things worked out for a reason, and just feel very blessed to have had such wonderful parents.
Susan, they were amazingly blessed to have you. Huh?
And then something else I want to say about hearing from everyone else. My feelings are all, as a daughter with my parents, and everybody else has completely a different relationship to them, as friends. And, when I hear some of their friends talk about them, I learn things about my parents that I didn't know. So it's nice to hear from other people and what your relationships were with my parents.
Susan, you were amazing as a daughter, devoting the last year of Heshy's life to taking care of him. I mean, that is just incredible. I want to read a couple things that were in the chat, people who may not be able to, use their microphone. Irv Richard says, I was always impressed with the love he had for his wonderful wife. They always looked after each other. Amy Cecil says, my condolences to the entire family, synagogue friends, and others. I never had the pleasure of meeting Heshy, but I wish I had. I do, however, know and love Susan and Bernie. Susan, you're your father's daughter, and the world is a better place for it. So I would like to open it up to others who may want to share. I mean, maybe you're sharing in your own heart, and that's okay too. But if you'd like to share something, a memory, a funny story. I mean, there are people here, I think, from the senior Havurah who probably were the beneficiaries of his jokes at the beginning of his meetings. They were pretty
Can
interesting.
anybody think of a better ambassador for this country than Heshy and Norma?
Nope.
Nope.
Bill Oppenheim says, my heartfelt condolences to the entire Glick family. Norma and Heshy meant so much to us.
I'm Lori Magnus. I'm a member of the Senior Havara. I knew Norma and Heshy for really a long time. And Heshy always told off-color jokes. It's true. And Norma would say, now you know what putz means, don't you? And then she'd tell us, and it was so funny. It was almost funnier than his jokes.
That's funny.
Anita wants to say a few words.
Okay, Anita, go ahead.
I was very privileged to know Heshy and Norma for about 50 years, and very privileged indeed. He was a wonderful man. He still is a wonderful man in my eyes. I loved him like a brother. We have traveled many times to Europe, and it was just wonderful traveling with the both of them. It was like a brother and a sister getting together. We had lots of fun, and I remember him with great fondness, as well as Norma. They were wonderful, generous people, loved by many, and certainly loved by Kermit and myself. And I love the family just as well. They're wonderful children and very devoted and loving. And I hope that my dear friend Heshy and Norma are resting in peace with each other.
Thank you, Anita.
Okay.
I'd like to make a quick comment, another one, that as you mentioned, Rabbi, that Heshy was a poker aficionado, and I was one of the people that contributed to his fund for nearly 40 years.
I know he was very close to his poker buddies.
It was seven of us.
No.
I want to,
The new battery in my.
Susie, you need to mute yourself. Was that, yes, Jerry, please. Are you muted? Because we
can you hear me now?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
I as well knew Heshy and Norma for over 50 years. And we also traveled a lot together. We went to French Polynesia, we did China, we went all through South America. We went to Europe with him. But his favorite place that he took us was to his apartment in Rapid City, South Dakota. And he actually went up and knocked on the door. And yes, there was a gentleman still in the Air Force living there. And he let him in. And Heshy says the apartment didn't change in the 40 years that he had been there. And that was his favorite place that we went together.
And you were one of his poker buddies as well, right?
Oh yeah, we played for over 45 years together.
Wow. Was he a good poker player?
He cheated.
Okay. Let's see. Lila Basham says, our condolences to the entire Glick family. Your parents were like my second parents. We all grew up together in the temple with Sunday school, celebrating our Jewish holidays together and attending Friday night services together. Hi, Lori, Susan, and Bernie, Martin, and Shirley. Shalom to you, Lila Stone.
Okay, I think I've already mentioned this before, but of course we had so many wonderful celebrations of our anniversaries. We were all married in '54. We've all known each other, and it's not just friends, it's family. And I think everybody loved both of them so much. And they will be missed, but you will remember all the fun times, the wonderful times, and that will give you comfort now and will give us comfort knowing that we had the privilege of having them as wonderful friends and family.
Thank you, Ruth.
Besides seeing the apartment in Rapid City, one of the things Heshy took a lot of pride in is he took us onto the Air Force Base and took us on a tour of the base and all the places that he worked at the base in Rapid City. And I will never forget that. But then as we were driving from South Dakota to North Dakota, they kept saying, as we're driving along the roads, oh, we had friends who lived here. And we had friends who lived here, and we had friends who lived here, all the way to North Dakota.
Thanks, Roz.
That's a funny story.
Anyone else would like to share? You know, there's 75 devices on this call, which is amazing because that means like, I think 125 people maybe. Great tribute to your dad. Carol Lee.
I remember the jokes.
Ah,
There were always wonderful jokes. And Nora and Heshy were so in love with each other and with the whole community. It was a community. We're more than friends. We are all family. But it was the jokes that really we remember.
absolutely.
Yes.
You kind of didn't expect it from him somehow.
No,
He seems so clean cut. He started every meeting of the Senior Havurah with a pledge of allegiance to the flag and the whole bit, and then he'd come out with these jokes. It's like, whoa. But Susan is the culprit for feeding them to him. Right, Susan? I know we're also going to have an opportunity on Saturday evening to share some memories. So if you'd rather
I'll
just,
say
please.
with those jokes, I had this relationship with my Uncle Gerson, and we would email back and forth, and he was sending me these jokes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, some of them were pretty raunchy. And I said something to my mom about it, and she said, oh, my brother wouldn't send you jokes like that. So I showed them to her, and my dad saw them. He said, oh, these are really good. Can you give me copies of them? So every time I would get these jokes, I would print them out for my dad, and we had a couple other friends would send us these jokes, and I would, print them out and bring them to my dad. And I found this file of his in the living room. It says jokes, some good, some bad. And when he used a joke at a certain meeting, he wrote down, Senior Havurah and the date that he used the joke. So it's kind of funny. And we had a lot. So I kind of carry on with his humor. And my younger son, Seth, also has that same sense of humor. And there's some people in the world do not get this dry humor.
Right.
And if we were at a place and my dad told a joke and people, they didn't get it, he was like, what's wrong with you? Where's your sense of humor?
That's great. I have a question. Is Rabbi Gottlieb on? Because I don't see his name. Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay. I see your name now. Okay, wonderful. Just wanted to make sure. Let me introduce a couple of people to you. I'm going to spotlight you. This is Rabbi Gottlieb, who is Susan's rabbi. And he's going to be reading the English of the El Malei Rachamim. And now I got to get to the other view so I can show her cantor. He was on the screen before. Could you wave to me? There's so many people on here. There you are. Great. I'm going to spotlight you. And he will be leading our sung liturgy on Saturday because Cantor Bob is not available and you don't want to hear me singing. And I also would like to highlight Cantor Bob and Barbara because you heard them singing, but you probably didn't see them because you saw the words of the prayers. So we are very appreciative that you were both here tonight to add your beautiful voices to this service. And we are going to continue with El Malei Rachamim. So Bob, you will be on. I need to share that with people and then it'll get translated.
All right, Rabbi?
Yes.
Rabbi, I also wanted to say that we also have relatives on the Zoom from cousins from Philadelphia,
Okay.
and relatives from Texas, and our sons from Tennessee and Washington.
Well, welcome to everybody and thank you for being here to support the family. That's really important. So I'm going to share the prayer with you and then it'll be translated.
El Malei Rachamim, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, ומעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזו היא המזהירים. הנשמת השל צבי בן ויקטור, שלח לעולמו בגן עדן מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירם בצדק כנפיו לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן.
Rabbi Gottlieb.
With a slightly different translation.
That's okay. You know what? We'll just have you read it and you don't have to, let me,
O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Harold Glick, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is his portion. May he rest in peace, and together and humbly can we say,
amen. Thank you. And we're going to continue with the Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומשה ביקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אינו אמת מלכנו, אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו. וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, והארץ מתחת. אין עוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אחד, ושמו אחד.
Before we begin the Mourner's Kaddish, I'd like to ask if there are any other names people are thinking of tonight, whether you're in Shiva Shloshim, the first year of mourning, or observing a yard site. So if you would like to mention a name, please feel free to unmute yourself and and share that with us.
Werner Kofel,
Arnie Geller,
Adrian Gillis, Bob Gillis.
Stephen Schmeltz,
Rabbi Bennett Herman.
Any other names? And of course, oh, let's see, there's some in the chat. Brenda Oppenheim, Janine Lester, Reverend Jane Carl, Dina Eliason, Julia Eliason, Julia Paveda. We also think of, let's see, Brian Reams. Daniel Madden. We also, of course, think of the 500,000 who've died from COVID, those who've perished in the Holocaust and have no one to say the mourner's Kaddish for them. And I invite you to unmute and join us in the mourner's Kaddish. Yikadal, v'yikadash, Shemei Rabbah. Ve'alma divrach echutei, v'yamliach malchutei, v'chayachon yom echad, hayeh lechol beit Yisrael, v'agalah b'zman kariv.
Amen.
Hey Shemei Rabbah mivarach le'olam l'olmei almaya. Barach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitparam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yihalel v'yishab Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechmata le'amiran be'alma Amen. Hey Shalom Rabbah Mimshmaya Hayim Aleinu ve'Amo Yisrael. Amen. Say shalom v'ramav. Huya aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.
May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved, as together we say, Amen.
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 And Cantor Bob is going to close off the service with Oseh Shalom.
And please mute yourselves as well.
Yeah, please.
Oseh Shalom Imroma, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'imru Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ve'imru Amen.
Thank you again, everyone, for being here this evening to support the family and to remember Heshy. Remember that on Saturday, we have a memorial service at 6:30. And even though the service is over, if you would like to stay on and chat, you are more than welcome to do that. I'll allow you to unmute yourselves and enjoy each other's company.